And welcome to the Ask Coach Phil Now show alongside Kelly Phil Now in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm Dave Erickson. Today's topic is about developing a mental plan or a mental game plan. And Kelly, this is so important in the sport of triathlon, isn't it?
It is so essential. And I think a lot of athletes just focus on having that perfect physical game plan before a race and they neglect the mental side of things. And one of my favorite quotes is by Yogi Bear. He says, it's 90% mental and the other half is physical. And I think that's so true when you're out there racing for any endurance athlete. So, what I like all my clients to do is formulate that physical game plan, but then also have that mental game plan too. And it starts with visualization. So visualize going through the race from swimming to every transition, bike, transition T2, and then onto the run, and then also alongside the physical visualization going through the mental side of things. So visualize an absolutely perfect race where you're in that ideal performance state and completely in that zone. And then also visualizing obstacles. So on the swim, having your goggles get kicked off. On the bike, getting a flat tire. On the run, having stomach distress or cramping. And so you've been there in practice in your mind. So when it happens in a race, it's something that you've already gone through mentally and physically before the race. And then when that happens in the race, your bodies and mind is able to adapt. And that's another important part of being mentally prepared for the race is most of these endurance athletes are super type A. They like to have that schedule and they like everything to happen according to the plan. But when we're in that race environment, nothing happens according to that plan. So one of the keys to success is being able to adapt. So, you formulate, this is my nutrition on course, but then what happens if you hit a pothole and your whole bottle that has 400 calories, you don't have anymore. So you have to be adaptable and problem solve all day. So if you take steps before the race day to think about solutions before when you're in that environment, you're able to make the most out of it. And then something besides another point that I wanted to make is it's super important when you're in that race environment to just stay in that moment. So often we're focused on what went wrong prior and then also the future. And so often our mind is, oh my gosh, I'm seventh in my age group. I need to move up a few more spots and I'm right there. Or I'm first right now. What happens if I bonk? But no, what you have to do is you have to focus on just putting one foot in front of the other and staying in that moment and keeping that simplicity of mindset.
So each of these points really work on the other point. So if it's the visualization, that this is my game plan, stay to my game plan, and I already have a plan B just in case. And the state of the moment, meaning stay within what you can do and not worry about what's around you.
Absolutely. Exactly. And instead of having that outward focus, like we're focusing on everyone around us and we're not focusing on what we have to do. But if mentally you're just, keeping everything simple and focusing on just putting one foot in front of the other and staying in that present, then it's going to set you up for success.
When did you first develop this mental game for yourself? Was it a long process, or was it something that easily clicked for you?
Well, it was actually, I was a college tennis player. So in order to be successful on the tennis court, you had to be mentally strong because there were so many matches. I was down a set in 4-0 or 5-0 and ended up coming back because literally you could have 1 point in a match that changes the dynamic of the entire match. Like your opponent could be the one that's on the offensive and then something happens and then mentally, they fall apart. So I learned that from my tennis days that, to just stay in that moment and focus on one shot, 1 point, one set at a time. And then that carries over into triathlon racing too. So I owe that mental strength that I learned from all of my tennis days because, there were so many times I was against opponents that were so much better physically than me, but I had that mindset that I could find a way to problem solve and to beat them. And so many times when you're playing tennis, maybe your forehand's off or you're not hitting that serve right. So you have to be adaptable and you have to find ways to change things up, whether or not it's, okay, maybe today we're going to focus more on serve and volleying because my forehand's not my weapon like it normally is. And so that adaptability has to happen in the sport of triathlon too. And just, the simplicity of mindset when you're playing, like how many tennis balls you hit every day in practice, so many, and it becomes pretty easy. But then in that when you're actually competing, you can have so much pressure and forget how to, perform. But if you just break everything down into that, into simplicity, then in both, the physical, all I have to do is keep my eye on the ball. All I have to do when I'm swimming is put one stroke at a time, one pedal, one foot strike, and it just becomes a lot easier to get to where you want to go.
I would think the same might be true for a 70.3 Ironman or a full distance Ironman. A lot can happen, and if you stay with your game plan, you never know what the person in front of you could have problems. And next thing you know, you move up a couple of slots just because you stayed focused in the moment.
Absolutely. And that happens so often, whether or not the person in front of you, maybe got a penalty or a flat tire or had stomach distress on the run. So all you can do is focus on what's in your control. And so often our eyes are focused on what we can't control, those uncontrollables. But if, you allow your mind to just focus on what is in your control, then that's the way to set you up for success, and to focusing on that process instead of having those performance oriented goals. But if we're focused on, how are we going to get to that end result by focusing on the controllables, that makes all the difference in the end.
If you have a question for Kelly, use the hashtag AskCoachPhil now on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you. Have a good day.